How narcissistic abuse destroys your confidence without you noticing. The number one mistake you can make is allowing anyone to destroy your confidence. And if you've been through narcissistic abuse, you might not even realize that it's happening until it's too late. Narcissists are experts at manipulating your thoughts and emotions, often making you doubt your worth, your abilities, and your place in the world. What starts as small, subtle jabs to your self-esteem can snowball into a full-blown confidence crisis. All while you still think you're just being too sensitive or overreacting. But let's be clear. Narcissistic abuse doesn't just hurt your feelings. It chips away at your core belief in yourself. And by the time you catch on, it can feel like your confidence is in ruins. If you're wondering how this happens and how to fight back, stay with me as we explore how narcissistic abuse erodes your confidence without you noticing. Are you ready for number one? Constant comparison. Narcissists frequently point out how someone else is better than you, more successful, attractive, or talented, making you feel like you can't measure up. Over time, this repeated comparison sinks in, and you start believing you're not good enough. Dr. Ramani Durvasula explains, narcissists weaponize comparison to control and diminish you, which keeps you feeling small and doubting yourself. The worst part is that it tricks you into chasing impossible standards, thinking you'll finally be enough if you can improve. Brené Brown, an American academic, speaker, and author, put it best in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. Comparison is the thief of joy. Let's talk about number two. Overwhelming criticism. Narcissists criticize everything, from minor mistakes to significant accomplishments, making you feel like nothing you do is ever good enough. Over time, their constant negativity becomes your inner voice, leading you to doubt your abilities. In his book, Rethinking Narcissism, clinical psychologist Craig Malkin explains that narcissists use criticism to chip away at your self-esteem because it shifts the focus to your flaws rather than their insecurities. Even your proudest moments can feel hollow because their words keep replaying in your mind. Glennon Doyle, an American author and queer activist, explains in her book Untamed, if you live your life to please others, you will never truly be free. Rebuilding your confidence starts with silencing the narcissist's voice and replacing it with kinder, more empowering self-talk. Let's move on to number three, lack of appreciation. Narcissists rarely show genuine gratitude, no matter how much you do for them. If they do thank you, it's often shallow, or paired with a backhanded compliment, leaving you feeling unimportant. Over time, this pattern makes you question your value. Dr. Harriet Breaker, a social and clinical PhD psychologist, explains in her book, The Disease to Please. When approval is withheld, it creates a cycle where you work harder for recognition that never comes, draining your self-worth. You might start to believe you don't deserve appreciation, leading to self-doubt and burnout. In his book, Stop Walking on Eggshells, British journalist Paul Mason describes how this dynamic can make you feel invisible, like a shadow of yourself. The key to breaking free is realizing their lack of appreciation isn't about you, but their inability to value others. Now let's continue to number four, weaponized empathy. Narcissists use weaponized empathy to manipulate your kind and compassionate nature. They twist your desire to care for others into a guilt trip, making you feel selfish for prioritizing your needs. Over time, you start to associate self-care with being wrong or unkind. Dr. Lindsay Gibson, a clinical psychologist and author, explains in her book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, that manipulators exploit emotional sensitivity to keep others feeling responsible for their happiness. It leaves you doubting your instincts and feeling unsure about asserting yourself. Brené Brown, in Daring Greatly, reminds us that empathy without boundaries is not empathy. It's enabling. Genuine empathy means caring for others without sacrificing your well-being, and reclaiming this balance is key to breaking free from their manipulation. You shouldn't miss number 5. Constant interruptions. When narcissists cut you off or dismiss your thoughts, it makes you feel like your voice doesn't matter. Over time, this can lead you to question the value of your ideas. Dr. Ramani Durvasula explains in her book, Should I Stay or Should I Go?, that narcissists interrupt because they view conversations as a stage to showcase themselves, not as a platform for mutual exchange. When silenced repeatedly, you hesitate to speak up, worrying your words will be ignored. As Julian Treasure says in his TED Talk, How to Speak So That People Want to Listen, if you don't feel heard, it can undermine your sense of worth. To rebuild your confidence, remember your voice matters and start asserting yourself in spaces where you're valued. Are you still up for number 6? Belittling your interests. Narcissists often belittle your interests, whether it's a hobby, career, or passion. They might mock what matters to you, saying things like, "That's a waste of time," or "Why do you even bother?" This constant devaluation can make you question the worth of your pursuits. Psychologist Dr. Jean Twenge explains in her book, The Narcissism Epidemic, that narcissists belittle others to make themselves feel superior. Over time, you may start doubting your passions and feel like they aren't valuable. In her book, The Wisdom of Anxiety, counselor Cheryl Paul says, "When we doubt ourselves, we start to lose our connection to our true desires." To rebuild your confidence, remember your passions are valuable, and don't let their belittling affect how you see them. Let's keep it moving to number 7. Eroding your identity. Narcissists often push you to change aspects of yourself, like how you dress, act, or think, so you fit their ideal image. These changes might seem small at first, but over time, they add up, and you start losing touch with who you are. Psychologist and peacemaker Dr. Marshall Rosenberg explains in his book, Nonviolent Communication, that narcissists manipulate others by controlling their sense of identity. The more you change to meet their expectations, the further you drift from your authentic self. It leaves you feeling hollow and insecure, like you're wearing a mask. Clinical psychologist Dr. Jonas Webb explains in her book Running on Empty, when someone keeps telling you who you should be, it becomes difficult to remember who you are. Reconnecting with your true identity is essential to rebuilding your confidence and reminding yourself that your authentic self is worthy of respect. Here comes number 8. Invalidating your independence. Narcissists often try to undermine your independence because it threatens their control over you. They might mock your decisions or discourage you from pursuing your goals, making you feel like you can't succeed without their input. Over time, this erodes your self-reliance and self-worth. Licensed psychotherapist Dr. Linda Martinez-Louis explains in her book Freeing Yourself from the Narcissist in Your Life that narcissists disempower others by diminishing their sense of autonomy. This constant invalidation can make you doubt your abilities and seek their approval before making any decisions. In her book, The Way of Integrity, life coach Martha Beck says, "When we give up our autonomy, we give up the very thing that makes us whole." Reclaiming your independence is essential to rebuilding your confidence and trusting your decision-making ability. Moving on to number 9, promoting self-sacrifice. Narcissists often push you to prioritize their needs above your own, making self-sacrifice seem like a virtue. Over time, this teaches you to neglect your well-being and stop asserting your needs. As therapist Dr. Laura Berman writes in The Power of Pleasure, "When you put others' needs ahead of your own too often, you can lose sight of your desires and even your own identity. This constant sacrifice diminishes your confidence, making you feel like you're not worthy of care or attention. You may start to believe that others' needs are more important than yours, leading to exhaustion and self-doubt." In her book, Rise, Sister, Rise, life coach Rebecca Campbell says, "We often give from an empty cup, but true nourishment comes from filling ourselves up first." Rebuilding your confidence requires learning to prioritize your needs and recognizing that you deserve to care for yourself. Finally, we're down to number 10. Eroding trust in others. Narcissists manipulate you into believing that others are untrustworthy or against you, causing you to doubt those around you. This isolation deepens your dependence on them, making it harder to trust or connect with others. As American self-help author George K. Simon explains in his book, In Sheep's Clothing, narcissists use manipulation to create division and mistrust, making you feel isolated and dependent on them. Over time, this undermines your confidence in building relationships. You start to feel alone and unsure of who to trust, which affects your self-worth. Dr. Lillian Glass notes, "The narcissist isolates you from others, making it harder to see that there are people who genuinely care about you." Listen closely. Understanding that trust can be rebuilt with the right people is key to restoring your confidence. In the end, narcissistic abuse doesn't just affect your self-esteem. It sneaks in, piece by piece, until you're left questioning who you are. But here's the good news. You can start rebuilding once you recognize the damage. It won't happen overnight, but with awareness, self-care, and setting boundaries, you can take back control and restore your confidence. Remember, the most crucial step is acknowledging that it's not your fault and you're not alone. You can heal and emerge even stronger with time and effort.